Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. The autumn wind carried the scent of wet concrete and steel across the construction site. Benjamin Estes stood at the edge of the massive bridge project, his weathered hands gripping the safety railing as he watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. At 42, he had earned every gray hair at his temples, along with his reputation as the state's most reliable structural engineer. Mr. Estes, called Mike Park, his site supervisor, jogging up with a tablet in hand. Final safety checks are complete. Everything's exceeding specifications by at least 15%. Benjamin took the tablet and reviewed the numbers, nodding in approval. Good work, Mike. This is why we do double shifts. Excellence isn't achieved by cutting corners. Mike hesitated before speaking again. Sir, some of the crew were wondering, will you be joining us for drinks tonight? It's kind of becoming a tradition. Benjamin handed the tablet back. I need to review the contractor proposals for the support structure. The $50 million we're getting for this project comes with responsibilities. Mike shook his head with a chuckle. Your wife must be a saint, putting up with these hours. Benjamin's expression remained neutral. Naomi understands what it takes to build a legacy. He didn't mention the growing distance between them or how her understanding seemed to deepen as his income grew. Walking to his truck, Benjamin checked his phone, 3 missed calls from Leonard. His younger brother had been unusually persistent lately, leaving cryptic voicemails about needing to discuss something important regarding Naomi. Benjamin deleted the notifications. Leonard had always been prone to dramatics, especially when he needed money. The drive home took him past the newly developed luxury shopping district. A familiar car caught his eye, Naomi's red Mercedes, the one he had bought her for their 15th anniversary, parked outside a high-end boutique. He checked his watch. 7:30 p.m. Her yoga class with Celeste should have ended an hour ago. 20 minutes later, he pulled into their circular driveway, the security lights illuminating their colonial-style home. Inside, he found Matthew sprawled on the living room couch, his 16-year-old son completely absorbed in his phone. Hey, son, Benjamin said, setting down his briefcase. Matthew barely glanced up. As Benjamin stepped inside, he noticed 3 shopping bags from high-end boutiques sitting by the stairs. The logos matched the stores he had passed earlier. Your mother home? He asked. Nah, still at yoga with Celeste, Matthew replied, his thumbs flying across his phone screen. She said she'd be back late. Benjamin loosened his tie, studying his son's face for any sign of awareness or concern. Finding none, he headed to his home office, a sanctuary lined with engineering awards and family photos. He paused in front of one, their family vacation in Maui 5 years ago. Naomi's smile had seemed genuine then. His phone buzzed. Leonard again. With a sigh, Benjamin answered, his voice carrying the weight of 18 years of dealing with his brother's crises. What? Ben, we need to talk. Leonard's voice was urgent. It's about Naomi. I've been trying to reach you. Unless the house is on fire, it can wait until tomorrow. Benjamin cut him off. I've got proposals to review. Good night, Leonard. He ended the call and settled into his work, losing himself in calculations and safety margins. Time slipped by until the garage door rumbled open at 10:45 p.m. Naomi's footsteps echoed through the house, accompanied by the rustle of shopping bags. She appeared in his office doorway, looking as flawless as she had that morning. Her designer workout outfit was pristine, without a hint of sweat. You're working late again, she said, leaning against the doorframe. You know what they say about all work and no play. Benjamin met her gaze. Someone has to pay for those shopping bags. A flicker of something, guilt, defiance, crossed her face before she smiled. Just treating myself a little. You're always saying I should enjoy the fruits of your labor. That I do. He turned back to his work. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge if you're hungry after your workout. Oh, Celeste and I grabbed a bite after class. She pushed off the doorframe. Don't stay up too late, darling. Benjamin waited until her footsteps faded before opening his laptop. He typed Celeste yoga instructor followed by their zip code. 0 results. He tried different variations, but nothing matched Naomi's supposed new friend. The next morning, Benjamin arrived at the office early. The project headquarters occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, offering a clear view of the bridge project in the distance. His assistant, Gabriella, intercepted him with coffee and a report. Something odd got flagged, she said, handing it over. Someone tried accessing your email from an unauthorized device yesterday. Benjamin scanned the report. Were they successful? No. Our security blocked it. They traced the IP to a local business, Vaughn Properties. He kept his expression neutral as he memorized the address. Probably spam bots. Have IT update our filters. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and site inspections. During lunch, instead of eating, Benjamin drove past Vaughn Properties, a sleek modern office building with floor-to-ceiling windows. Through the glass, Benjamin spotted a man in an expensive suit showing a property listing to a couple. The agent's smile was too white, too practiced. His phone buzzed with a text from Leonard. "This isn't fair to you. We need to talk about what Naomi's doing." Benjamin muted the conversation. That evening, he worked later than usual, calling Naomi to say he'd be home after 9. But at 8 o'clock, he parked his truck a block away and walked back under the cover of growing darkness. As he approached, an unfamiliar car caught his eye, a black BMW with dealer plates, parked down the street. The house was mostly dark, except for the soft glow from the master bedroom window. Moving quietly, Benjamin circled to the back, where the patio doors offered a clear view of the kitchen. Inside, Matthew sat at the island, headphones on, arguing with someone over the phone. "Bro, your mom's really brave," Matthew said, laughing. "Having her lover over while Dad's at work." He paused, listening. "The fool works double shifts to give us a good life, while Mom spends wild nights with her boyfriends." Benjamin felt ice in his veins, but his mind remained clear. With steady hands, he hit record on his phone. His screen vibrated with another text from Leonard. "I can't keep this secret anymore. Naomi's selling the house behind your back." Benjamin turned, walking back to his truck. He drove to a nearby park and pulled up a contact, Catherine Braun, a private investigator he'd worked with on construction fraud cases. When she answered, he got straight to the point. "I need your services. Personal matter. Discretion is essential." "Of course," Catherine said. "What's the target?" "My wife, Naomi Mercer, and a real estate agent named Vaughn. I'll have an initial report within 48 hours. Standard rates apply. Money's not an issue." Benjamin ended the call. By the time he arrived home at 10, the house was quiet. Matthew's door was closed, music thumping behind it. In the master bedroom, an unfamiliar cologne clung to the air, barely masked by the sharp scent of cleaning products. From the ensuite bathroom, the shower ran. Benjamin changed for bed, his movements methodical. The sheets on Naomi's side were slightly wrinkled. On her nightstand, her phone buzzed. Amazing as always. Can't wait until next time. He didn't react, didn't confront. Instead, he opened his laptop and began documenting everything. Dates, times, observations. In his profession, details meant the difference between structural integrity and catastrophic failure. The shower shut off. Naomi emerged in silk pajamas, her damp hair wrapped in a towel. She slipped into bed with a soft sigh. "You're home late," she murmured. "Big project," Benjamin replied evenly. "How was yoga?" "Oh, wonderful," she said with a smile. "Celeste is really helping me improve my form." He nodded, filing away another lie. Every deception was another crack in the foundation of their marriage. But unlike his bridges, this structure wouldn't be repaired. It would be demolished. The next morning, Benjamin stuck to his routine. He kissed Naomi goodbye, nodded to Matthew, and drove off as usual. But instead of heading to the construction site, he made his way to his lawyer's office. Marcus Park listened as Benjamin laid out his observations, recordings, and suspicions. "I need everything documented," Benjamin explained. "But before I make any moves, I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with." Marcus reviewed the evidence carefully. "Smart. Most people confront first and lose their advantage." He set the papers down. "What's your next step?" "Waiting for my PI's report. Then I'll decide." Benjamin stood to leave, but turned back at the door. "One more thing. I need you to quietly draft divorce papers. But don't file anything yet." "You're handling this well," Marcus observed. Benjamin's expression remained steady. "Engineering taught me something valuable, Marcus. When you discover a structural weakness, you don't evacuate the building right away. You study the problem, develop a plan, and then execute it, precisely." The rest of the day, he buried himself in work, inspecting bridge supports and reviewing safety protocols. Work was his anchor, the one thing he could trust. Numbers didn't lie. Steel didn't betray. That evening, Leonard called again. "Ben, please," his brother's voice was urgent. "You need to know what's happening. Is Naomi coming clean?" Benjamin interrupted. "Or are you just playing your part?" A long silence. "What?" Benjamin's voice remained calm. "Tell me about Adrian Vaughn." The sharp intake of breath on the other end told him everything. "How did you?" "Goodbye, Leonard." Benjamin hung up, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Later, in his home office, he reviewed the preliminary report from Catherine Braun. The private investigator had a reputation for discretion, which made her the perfect choice for this job. Her findings confirmed his suspicions and revealed much more. Adrian Vaughn wasn't just a real estate agent. He was a rising star in luxury property sales, known for quick, undermarket deals that always seemed to benefit his select circle of clients. and Leonard's name had appeared in Adrian's client list 3 times in the past year. Benjamin leaned back in his chair. Leonard's sudden concern wasn't guilt. It was part of the plan. His brother would warn him about Naomi's affair, ensuring a messy divorce. Naomi would keep the house, and Adrian would facilitate a quick, undervalued sale. Leonard, ever the concerned sibling, would receive a kickback for his role. The betrayal was calculated, elegant in its complexity. His wife, his brother, her lover. Together, they had constructed their own bridge, a structure built on deception and manipulation. Benjamin smiled slightly. They had overlooked one crucial detail. He was an engineer, and he knew exactly how to make their carefully laid plans collapse. Catherine's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Your wife isn't just having an affair," she said, laying photographs across his desk. "She's part of something much bigger. Look at this beach house," Catherine said, pointing to an aerial shot of a stunning oceanfront property. Benjamin scanned the details. Officially valued at $2,300,000. Sold last month for $1,100,000. "Let me guess," he said, eyes narrowing. Adrian Vaughn handled the sale. Catherine nodded, sliding another photograph across the desk. It showed Naomi's red Mercedes parked in the driveway. "And guess who's been spotted there every Tuesday and Thursday?" Benjamin's jaw clenched. "Who owns it?" "On paper? A shell corporation. But the funds used for the purchase trace back to an old friend of yours, Rich O'Brien." Benjamin exhaled slowly. Rich had been his best friend for 20 years. Their families vacationed together. Their kids grew up side by side. "Show me everything." Catherine pulled out more documents. "Rich isn't just covering for Naomi's affair. He's helping Adrian launder money through undervalued property sales. They buy high-end homes, artificially deflate the value, sell them under market price, and funnel the profits into offshore accounts. And Leonard? Your brother's involved, but he's small-time compared to the others. He thinks he's just helping Naomi secure a better deal in the divorce. He has no idea he's part of a money laundering operation." Benjamin absorbed the information, his mind already formulating the next steps. "Keep digging," he instructed. "I want every name, every property, every dollar accounted for." Catherine hesitated. "There's more. Naomi's been pushing to sell your house, right? She mentioned wanting something more modern just last week. It's part of their scheme. They plan to undervalue your home by at least 40%. Adrian already has a buyer lined up, another shell company." Just then, Benjamin's phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. "Honey, I've been thinking about what we discussed. I found a great real estate agent who could help us look at new houses. His name is Adrian Vaughn." Benjamin smirked and turned the screen toward Catherine. "Perfect timing. What are you going to do?" "Play along." He quickly typed a reply. "Sounds great. Set up a meeting." After Catherine left, Benjamin placed a call to his project manager. "Mike, remember those stress tests we ran on the bridge support columns?" "Yeah, I need something similar, for a personal matter." "What kind of stress test?" "I need to push some people until they crack," Benjamin said. "But first, I need to know exactly how much pressure they can take." The next day, he met Adrian Vaughn at his office. The real estate agent radiated artificial charm, his smile practiced and insincere. Benjamin returned it just as smoothly. "Let the game begin." "Mr. Estes," Adrian greeted, extending his hand. "Your wife has told me so much about you." Benjamin shook his hand firmly, his grip professional yet unyielding. "Funny, she hasn't mentioned you until recently." Adrian's smile flickered for a split second before regaining its practiced ease. "Well, I specialize in discrete transactions. Some of my clients prefer privacy, like the beach house on Ocean Drive." There was the briefest pause, almost imperceptible, before Adrian replied, "I'm not familiar with that property." "No?" Benjamin leaned back. "Perhaps my friend Rich O'Brien might refresh your memory." A crack formed in Adrian's polished facade. "Maybe we should focus on your house," he suggested. "Naomi mentioned you're looking for something more contemporary." "Actually," Benjamin leaned in, his tone measured, "I'm interested in a lot of things. Property valuations, market manipulation, money laundering." Adrian's complexion paled. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Benjamin said, rising to his feet. "Just a miscalculation, on your part." He walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Adrian, tell my wife I'm looking forward to our dinner party this weekend. The one where you'll be discussing our home's potential value." Back at his office, another report from Catherine arrived. The corruption ran deeper than they had anticipated. Adrian Vaughn wasn't just orchestrating local scams. He was under federal investigation for a massive property fraud operation spanning 3 states. Benjamin's phone rang. "Leonard, have you met with Adrian yet?" His brother's voice sounded both eager and uneasy. "Just left his office." "Interesting guy," Benjamin replied casually. "You've worked with him before, haven't you?" "I might have done some consulting." "Must be profitable. That new boat of yours looks expensive." "Ben, Listen, about Naomi. Save it for the dinner party. Leonard, you're coming, right? Adrian will be discussing the sale of our house. A long pause. Then, reluctantly, I'll be there. Over the next few days, Benjamin and Catherine gathered more evidence. The network of corruption extended far beyond Adrian. Local judges fast-tracked suspicious property transfers. Bank managers conveniently overlooked questionable transactions. And at the center of it all, Adrian Vaughn, orchestrating everything with precision. The dinner party was set for Saturday evening. Naomi had invited Adrian, Leonard, and Rich, along with several other couples, unwitting witnesses to the night's revelations. Dinner is going to be wonderful, Naomi called from the bedroom as she got dressed. Are you sure you're comfortable with Adrian handling the sale? His commission is a bit higher than standard. Benjamin adjusted his tie in the mirror. I trust your judgment, dear. After all, Leonard and Rich both recommended him so highly. Naomi appeared behind him, elegant in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. They do, she agreed, smoothing her hair. In fact, Rich was just telling me about a beautiful beach house Adrian helped him acquire. Ocean Drive, I believe. Benjamin watched her reflection in the mirror as the color drained from her face. I wouldn't know anything about that, Naomi said quickly. Benjamin turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Funny, your car seems to know the route quite well. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Their guests had arrived. The evening unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. In the living room, Adrian held court effortlessly, discussing property values and market trends with polished charm. Leonard hovered at the edges of conversations, visibly uneasy, while Rich tried a little too hard to appear natural. During dinner, Benjamin stood, raising his glass. To new beginnings, he said smoothly, and to true friends, those who always have your best interests at heart. His gaze moved deliberately from one face to another. Naomi, Adrian, Leonard, Rich. One by one, they looked away. After dessert, Benjamin suggested the men retire to his study for brandy. Once the door was shut, he slipped a recording device from his pocket and pressed play. Gentlemen, he said, his voice calm but firm. Let's talk about the real estate market, specifically, how to manipulate it for personal gain. Adrian's practiced smile faltered. I'm not sure what you're implying. No implications, Adrian, just facts. Benjamin turned his laptop to face them, the screen flickering to life. Like the fact that you're under federal investigation for fraud. Or that my brother here gets kickbacks for referring desperate, divorcing couples to you. Or that Rich has been helping you launder money through undervalued property sales. Their faces drained of color. You're bluffing, Adrian said, but there was no confidence in his voice. Am I? Benjamin clicked a button, and an audio file played, a recorded phone call. Dirk's voice filled the room, discussing his mother's affairs. Then snippets of Leonard's conversations with Adrian, outlining the entire divorce scheme. Jesus, Ben, Leonard whispered. I can explain. No need. Benjamin's tone was ice. The FBI will handle the explanations. Unless what? Rich asked, sweat beading on his forehead. Unless you start talking. Now, Benjamin's eyes swept across them. Every deal, every property, every player involved. I want it all. You're making a mistake, Adrian said, straightening his jacket. You have no idea who you're dealing with. No, Adrian. Benjamin smiled, a cold, knowing smile. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I build bridges for a living. I understand structural integrity. And right now, your entire operation is about to collapse. The study door creaked open. Naomi stepped in, her expression unreadable. Is everything all right? We heard raised voices. She stopped, taking in the scene. Adrian's rigid posture, Leonard's pale face, Rich's nervous fidgeting. Perfect timing, dear, Benjamin said smoothly. We were just discussing real estate fraud and money laundering. You know, those Tuesday and Thursday meetings at the beach house. Naomi's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Benjamin interrupted, turning back to the men. You have 24 hours to decide, Benjamin said, his voice steady. Either you help me take down the bigger players, or you go down with them. Adrian's eyes burned with fury. You're insane, he snarled. We'll destroy you. Benjamin chuckled, a genuine, unbothered laugh. With what? The recordings Naomi's been making of our arguments? The ones she planned to use as evidence of emotional abuse. He held up her phone. Next time, don't sync your devices to our home cloud storage. The dinner party ended abruptly. Their guests fled into the night, their carefully maintained facades crumbling. Benjamin stood at his study window, watching them disappear into the darkness. His phone buzzed, a message from Catherine. FBI contact confirmed. They want to meet tomorrow. Benjamin smiled. The foundation was laid. Now, it was time to build something new, something that would endure long after the dust settled. He turned to find Naomi standing in the doorway, her world unraveling before her eyes. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice tight. "Long enough," Benjamin replied, "to understand that our marriage wasn't the only thing you were willing to sacrifice." He walked past her, heading toward their bedroom. "Pack what you need for a few days. When the FBI starts making arrests, I'd rather not have to explain why my wife is still living here." She stared at him in disbelief. "You'd really do this? After 18 years? Benjamin paused at the door. "You know what separates a good engineer from a great one, Naomi?" He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "A great engineer knows that sometimes the most important thing isn't building something to last. It's knowing exactly where to place the charges when it's time to bring something down." He left her standing there, her carefully curated life collapsing like a house of cards in a storm. Tomorrow, he would meet with the FBI. Tomorrow, he would begin dismantling everything Adrian and his conspirators had built. But tonight, he would sleep soundly, because the fools weren't the ones working overtime. The real fools were the ones who thought they could outsmart a man who understood that every structure, no matter how meticulously designed, had its breaking point. And Benjamin had found theirs. Monday morning dawned crisp and cold. Benjamin arrived at his office at 6 a.m., reviewing the final details of his plan. The FBI raids were set to begin at exactly 9 a.m., just when Naomi would be at her so-called yoga class, which, in reality, was her standing meeting with Adrian at the beach house. His secure line buzzed. "Everything's in position," Agent Evelyn Ramirez reported. "Teams are standing by at all targeted locations." "Good," Benjamin said, checking his watch. "Remember, Judge Rebecca Langley needs to be handled separately. The moment she hears about the raids, she'll try to interfere." "Already covered," Evelyn assured him. "We have a team at the courthouse with a warrant for her records. Once we move on Adrian, she won't have time to destroy evidence." Benjamin nodded, opening his laptop. His legal team had prepared emergency motions, ready to be filed in a different district, one beyond Judge Langley's influence. His phone buzzed again. A text from Naomi. "Heading to yoga. Don't wait up for dinner. Working late with Celeste on a new routine." Benjamin smirked. The timing couldn't have been better. At 8:55 a.m., he dialed his company's CFO. "Jim, remember those documents we discussed? Process the bonus transfer now." Jim hesitated. "You sure about this, Ben? It's unusual to release project bonuses early." "The documentation citing personal issues is all there," Benjamin replied smoothly. "Trust me, by noon, you'll understand." At precisely 9 a.m., Benjamin watched the security feed he had arranged at Adrian's office. FBI agents swarmed the building, their movements precise and coordinated. On another screen, he observed similar operations unfolding at the beach house and Judge Langley's chambers. His phone erupted with notifications. "Leonard, what the hell is happening?" "FBI at Adrian's office." "Rich, they're saying something about a fraud investigation." "Call me." "Naomi, why are there federal agents here?" Benjamin ignored them all, his focus remaining on his computer screen as his lawyers filed the emergency motions. By 10 a.m., they had secured court orders freezing all associated assets, including those hidden within shell corporations. At 10:30 a.m., his real estate agent called. "Mr. Estes, the offer's been accepted. The buyers can close today." "Perfect. Process everything immediately," Benjamin instructed. By 11 a.m., every joint account had been transferred into his name, securing the funds before Naomi or her co-conspirators could access them. Their son Darius's college fund was moved into an irrevocable trust, locked behind strict conditions. He would need to maintain a 3.5 GPA, attend counseling, and work part-time. Naomi was the first to arrive at his office. Despite claiming an intense workout, her yoga outfit was immaculate. Adrian followed closely behind, his usual polished demeanor replaced with barely controlled fury. "What have you done?" Naomi demanded, storming into his office. Benjamin glanced up, unfazed. "Interesting yoga class. The beach house does have a lovely view." "You smug bastard," Adrian seethed, stepping forward. "You have no idea what you've started. I have judges in my pocket." "Like Rebecca Langley?" Benjamin interrupted. "Naomi's cousin. She's a little preoccupied with federal agents at the moment." The color drained from their faces. "You can't prove anything," Naomi recovered quickly. "I have recordings, proof of your emotional abuse, your controlling behavior." "You mean these recordings?" Benjamin clicked play on his computer. Naomi's voice filled the room, clear, undeniable evidence of her instructing Adrian on how to edit their arguments to sound worse than they were. "Next time, don't sync your phone to our home cloud storage," he advised coolly. Before they could respond, Leonard and Rich burst in, looking desperate. "Ben, please," Leonard pleaded. "Whatever you think is happening," Benjamin replied, "is exactly what's happening." Agent Ramirez entered, flanked by two FBI agents. "Mr. Vaughn, We have a warrant for your arrest. Money laundering, fraud, conspiracy. Adrian straightened his tie. You're making a mistake. My lawyers will already be busy defending themselves. Benjamin cut in. The FBI is particularly interested in how you and Judge Langley have been fast-tracking property transfers through her court. Rich collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. Oh God, the beach house sale. Just the tip of the iceberg, Agent Ramirez said. She turned to Leonard and Rich. Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Estes, you might want to call your lawyers too. The money laundering charges alone carry significant prison time. Amid the chaos, Matthew appeared in the doorway, his face pale. His mother stood beside Adrian, federal agents reading his uncle his rights, and Rich looking utterly broken. Dad. His voice cracked. What's going on? Benjamin met his son's eyes, his expression unreadable. Actions have consequences, he said evenly. Remember all those jokes about your mother's affairs? About your fool of a father working double shifts? He let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. Turns out, I wasn't the fool after all. Matthew's carefully curated social life collapsed as word spread among his friends' parents about his role in covering up his mother's affairs. The recordings of his cruel jokes circulated through his social circle, leaving him isolated and ashamed. Naomi made one final attempt at retaliation. I'll take everything in the divorce, the house, the accounts. The house. Benjamin interrupted. Already sold, legally and above market value. As for the accounts, they're secure. Darius's college fund is in an irrevocable trust. He met her furious gaze. You might want to focus on finding a good criminal lawyer instead. Adrian's expression twisted in realization. You orchestrated all of this. You played us. No, Adrian, Benjamin corrected, his tone calm. You played yourselves. I just understood the weak points in your plan, like that bridge I'm building. It's all about knowing where the pressure points are. FBI agents led Adrian away first, followed by Rich and Leonard. Naomi remained behind, her once perfect world in ruins. 18 years, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Thrown away for what? Revenge? Benjamin shook his head. Justice. The FBI estimates that your boyfriend's scheme bankrupted dozens of families. Consider yourself lucky, you're only facing fraud charges. Rebecca Langley, on the other hand, is looking at disbarment and federal prosecution. In the weeks that followed, Benjamin's reputation only grew stronger. The FBI investigation uncovered the full extent of Adrian's operation. Millions stolen in fraudulent property deals, dozens of victims left in financial ruin. Thanks to Benjamin's evidence, much of the stolen money was recovered, earning him both immunity and respect. Months later, Matthew stood in the living room of Benjamin's new home, a modest but elegant house purchased with his project bonus. His voice was heavy with shame. I'm sorry, Dad. I was stupid and cruel. Yes, you were, Benjamin replied, his tone firm. Your trust fund has conditions now. Maintain a 3.5 GPA, pass all classes, attend counseling, work part-time. Show me that you understand the value of honest work. Matthew hesitated. What about Mom? That's her journey, Benjamin said. Focus on yours. The criminal trials dominated the headlines. Naomi, Adrian, Leonard, and Rich faced federal charges. Rebecca Langley was disbarred, her judicial corruption exposed. The man they once dismissed as a workaholic fool had dismantled their entire operation, with the Benet precision he used to build his bridges. 1 year later, Benjamin stood at the opening ceremony of his bridge project. The mayor praised its design, its strength, its integrity. But Benjamin knew the real achievement wasn't in the steel and concrete spanning the river. It was in the lessons learned. That patience outweighs passion. That true strength lies in recognizing structural weaknesses. That sometimes, things must be torn down before something better can be built. And most importantly, that the fool isn't the one working double shifts to build something lasting. The real fools were the ones who mistook dedication for weakness, integrity for naivety. They never understood that Benjamin Mercer didn't just build bridges. 5 years later, the state penitentiary's visitor room was cold and sterile. Inmate number 247000, Naomi Mercer, sat stiffly in her orange jumpsuit. 5 years had stripped away her designer clothes, her flawless appearance, and her arrogant demeanor. Strands of gray streaked her once immaculate hair, and lines etched her face, marking the weight of her choices. Conjugal visits are on Thursdays, the guard smirked, leading Benjamin to the visitor's booth. Just finalizing some paperwork, Benjamin replied, his voice professional and detached. The guard nodded. Everyone knew the story. It had been front-page news for months. Naomi picked up the phone, her hands rough from years of prison work duty. Come to gloat? She asked bitterly. Benjamin simply placed a stack of divorce papers against the glass. Just need your signature. Unless, of course, you'd rather drag this out another 5 years. She stared at him, searching for any trace of the man she once thought she could manipulate. Instead, she found the steel she had always mistaken for weakness. 5 years wasn't enough, she whispered. I lost everything. You gave everything away, Benjamin corrected. There's a difference. Elsewhere in the system, in the maximum security wing, Adrian Vaughn sat in considerably worse conditions. His once thriving property empire had collapsed spectacularly after the FBI made its findings public. Over $50 million in fraudulent real estate deals had been uncovered, affecting more than 100 families. Adrian's sleek suits were long gone, replaced by standard-issue prison denim. The confidence he once wielded so effortlessly had been shattered by the reality of a 20-year sentence. His desperate attempts to bargain for leniency had only made things worse when investigators uncovered his connections to international money laundering. Mr. Vaughn, the prison counselor said during a mandated session, your appeal was denied. Again, Adrian scoffed. Those properties were legitimate deals. The counselor remained unimpressed. The federal court disagrees. The evidence Mr. Mercer provided was quite thorough. Adrian's prison account showed regular deposits from Celeste, his actual wife of 15 years. She had been living in Europe, completely unaware of his multiple affairs and fraudulent schemes until the FBI arrived at her door. She had divorced him immediately but, out of guilt, still sent small amounts for his commissary. Fallen figures. Leonard Mercer had fared better. His minor role in the fraud operation had earned him a lighter 5-year sentence in minimum security. He had written dozens of letters to Benjamin over the years. Each one returned unopened. His boathouse and savings had been seized to help repay victims. Released after 3 years for good behavior, Leonard found himself in a small apartment in another state, working as a grocery store manager. His dating profile listed rebuilding family relationships as a personal goal, but Benjamin's number remained blocked. Rich O'Brien's downfall had been equally swift. His 7-year sentence came with a $2 million fine. His wife, Susan, divorced him immediately after his arrest. His children refused all contact, and his accounting license? Permanently revoked. The reckoning. They had once dismissed Benjamin as a workaholic fool. Now, they were all living the consequences of their own arrogance. The beach house was sold at auction, with the proceeds distributed to fraud victims. However, the most spectacular downfall belonged to Judge Rebecca Langley. Sentenced to 12 years for judicial corruption, she became a cautionary tale now studied in law schools. Her judicial pension was revoked, her reputation was in ruins, and her wealthy husband divorced her, leaving her future post-release uncertain at best. For Matthew, the road to redemption was challenging but transformative. Under his father's strict conditions, he maintained a 3.9 GPA throughout college while working part-time at a local engineering firm. His counseling sessions unearthed deep-seated struggles with loyalty and integrity, issues he worked diligently to overcome. During one of their weekly dinners, a tradition they had kept for 5 years, Matthew finally shared his news. "Dad," he said, setting down his fork, "I got accepted into the master's program for structural engineering." Benjamin looked up, his pride carefully measured. "All on your own merit? No shortcuts, no favors?" Matthew nodded. "I learned that lesson." The bridge that had set everything in motion became an award-winning project, earning recognition in engineering journals worldwide. Benjamin's groundbreaking work in stress distribution led to multiple patents, generating significant royalties. But more importantly, the bridge stood as a testament to integrity, not just in construction but in character. His firm, now renamed Mercer & Associates, had expanded into both construction and fraud prevention consulting. His expertise had carved out an unexpected niche, helping companies detect and prevent internal schemes like the one he had once uncovered. Catherine Delacroix, now head of security operations, proved invaluable with her investigative skills. One afternoon, she dropped a file onto Benjamin's desk. "Another construction company looking for audit protection," she said. They heard about the Vaughn case. Benjamin's personal life had also been rebuilt, this time on solid ground. He had married Dr. Evelyn Park, a structural materials scientist he had met at a conference. She understood his dedication to his work because she shared it, both of them passionate about creating things that lasted. One evening, as they reviewed case files together, Evelyn mused, "The irony is that Naomi never understood what real security meant. She thought working double shifts was weakness." Benjamin nodded. "She never realized I was building something bigger than a paycheck." Thanks to Benjamin's meticulous documentation, the victims of Adrian's schemes had largely recovered their losses. The FBI's asset recovery team, led by Agent Ramirez, had traced and returned over $40 million to affected families. During a joint fraud prevention seminar, Ramirez turned to Benjamin with a nod of respect. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "your case literally rewrote our playbook on real estate fraud investigation." Benjamin had once been dismissed as just another workaholic. Now, his name stood for something far greater, proof that integrity, in both life and business, could withstand any storm. Benjamin's methodical approach not only exposed vulnerabilities in property transaction laws, but also led to regulatory reforms. The Mercer Protocol became the standard procedure for investigating suspected property fraud, setting a new benchmark in the field. Meanwhile, Naomi's release approached with little attention. Her prison counselor's reports indicated minimal remorse. She regretted being caught more than the harm she had caused. Her attempt to publish a tell-all book failed when publishers realized Benjamin's meticulous documentation left no room for her to manipulate the narrative. Adrian, still serving his longer sentence, had aged dramatically. Years of prison fights left him with a permanent limp, and his once potent charm was useless in an environment where everyone knew his crimes. His appeals fund had long since dried up, his former allies had abandoned him, and his cell walls were covered in elaborate property schemes, plans he would never bring to life. Leonard, struggling to rebuild his life, eventually found purpose coaching youth basketball at a community center. In his final letter to Benjamin, he wrote, "I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't deserve it. But watching these kids learn about teamwork and trust, I finally understand what I destroyed. Some foundations can't be rebuilt." Benjamin never opened the letter. He kept it in his desk drawer, a silent reminder of the past. Matthew graduated with honors, his thesis on structural integrity in high-stress environments winning academic awards. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He had come a long way from the boy he once was, now dating Gabriella, a law student specializing in corporate fraud prevention. One evening, a colleague remarked, "Your son is nothing like you described him 5 years ago." Benjamin nodded. He needed to understand that integrity isn't just about following rules. It's about building something worth keeping. The Mercer Protocol continued to expand beyond fraud prevention. Companies worldwide adopted its principles for corporate governance, recognizing that structural integrity applied not only to buildings, but to organizations as well. Despite his success, Benjamin's new home remained modest, a reflection of his unchanged values. In the basement, boxes of evidence from the case served as a reminder that justice, like engineering, demanded attention to detail and unwavering principles. Evelyn had made her own contributions to their space, a laboratory for testing building materials and a library filled with books on both engineering and ethics. Their dinner conversations often blended structural analysis with philosophical discussions about integrity. One evening, Evelyn observed, "You never seem bitter." Not after everything they did. Benjamin took a sip of his drink before replying, "Bitterness corrodes the foundation. I prefer to build." Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.